I'm Caitlin Clevenger here at the meeting for Main Street Matters in Placerville. Can you tell me a little bit about Main Street Matters and what it's all about?
Absolutely. Main Street Matters was a contest that Benjamin Moore ran back in 2013 across North America, and 20 communities were selected to have a portion of their historic main streets repainted. Placerville was one of the communities that was selected, and the Downtown Association is working with them on some other things that we could do at the same time to enhance the painting. Things like repaving the street, improving the sidewalks, and things like that.
Can you tell me a little bit about what the meeting is about tonight?
Absolutely. This is our second community meeting. We had a community meeting at the end of January to ask people from the town what things that they'd like to see us emphasize to complement the painting program. Tonight's bringing back their ideas and getting their sense of priorities and starting to set work plans to get these things accomplished in the next year or two.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm here with Lisa.
I work for the Placerville Downtown Association, so we're working also with the city of Placerville. We have a great project manager, Matt Boyer, who volunteered his time to help us. He's got a lot of project management experience, so he's been helping us work through the details. And of course, we're dealing with Benjamin Moore and their production company on timing and schedules and how this is all going to work. So we're really excited because it's really going to spruce up downtown, and we're ready for that.
Is there any other things that the Downtown Association is doing for this project?
For this project, we're going to actually do, in conjunction with Benjamin Moore, a kickoff first stroke party. That'll be on June 2nd around noon, and we invite the media and the public to come down, and we'll actually have them put a first brush stroke on one of the buildings that'll be selected. And then the painting should take about 2 or 3 weeks, and then we're having a Main Street Matters reveal celebration afterward, where we have kind of a big party to celebrate the painting. Also this supplemental program that Matt is working on along with the Downtown Association. Not only do we want to spruce up Main Street with the paint, but we're trying to see if there's other projects like maybe discounts on awnings or roofline lighting, or weeding inlets to the town, things that'll spruce up the town in conjunction with the painting. So we're working to see if the community's on board and going to volunteer. That's what this meeting is about tonight, both the painting and the supplemental program. So we're excited. It's going to be a great year on Main Street. We're really excited.
It sounds like it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm here with Allison Selly. Can you tell me what your role is in Main Street Matters?
I am the Placerville field producer.
And what's your job description?
So I work with the local officials and the contractors to help oversee this project on site.
Okay. Is there any more you can tell us? It's fun if you can.
I think that's basically the,
Okay.
I could go on for probably a day.
Okay.
But,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
I'm here with Chris Payne, the president of the Placerville Historical Society. Can you tell me how exactly you're involved in the city of Placerville?
In a couple of different ways. We have a museum at 524 Main Street, the society does, called the Fountain and Talma Museum. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm involved with the Placerville Downtown Association. I'm on the board of directors. And also, I'm involved with what's called the Placerville Economic Development Advisory Committee as an appointee on the for the PDA, the Placerville Downtown Association. I'm involved with that group. So I have a big stake in Main Street. Oh, another important thing, I'm also a property owner at 327 Main Street. So I really want this to succeed because I think we need to spruce up the city and make it look pretty good.
And how is the Historical Society contributing to Main Street Matters?
Well, just recently we spent $8,000 to spruce up the insides and a little bit on the outside of our building. We have a 1852 building. It's a stone building. And so we had the bricks repointed, meaning a mason came in and did the bricks, pulled out all the mortar that was there, that was Portland cement, and then put a replacement restoration type mortar in. So we really think that we're ahead in terms of getting something done because our project just completed last week. So it's a good thing, and we like the fact that that kind of ties into what's been happening on Main Street.
It's exciting. Thank you so much for the interview.
Okay, thanks.
I'm here with Cleve Morris, the city manager of Placerville. Can you tell me what your job description is?
Yeah, I'm, as you mentioned, the city manager of Placerville. I basically supervise all the functions in Placerville, police, public works. I work for the city council, and they tell me what to do, and I do it. So
And how you feel about Placerville winning the Main Street Matters thing?
it's exciting. It's a great opportunity for us. A number of other things we've got going on, and Main Street Matters is a big one for us in getting the downtown painted. There's some other things we want to do to clean it up, including pave downtown Main Street, and so it'll be a big plus and a big exciting for the city. So
Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
As you know, we had our last community meeting at the end of January. I think many of you were here for that. The day after that happened, our schedule changed a little bit on the painting and whatnot. We're going to talk about that tonight. Most of you have been kept up to date by reading Bill's updates on the website and staying, on top of that. So, again, this is just going to be a really special year on Main Street. We're really excited. It's getting closer, right? We're going to get painted here before you know it. And thanks to all of you for voting. We wouldn't be here without that. So we'll move this thing along. I'm going to introduce two people tonight. First of all, you guys probably remember Matt, who volunteered to be our fabulous project director for this event, for this activity, for both the Benjamin Moore painting aspect and the supplemental aspect. We're going to talk about both of those things tonight. And we have a representative here tonight from Benjamin Moore's production company. It's actually called Momentum Worldwide, right? Allison Silly. And so she may have come and talked to some of you downtown today. I know she was walking down Main Street and whatnot. So anyway, I'm going to pitch it off to whichever one of you.
So we thought we'd let Allison start with a quick overview of where they are and some of their work that's coming up, and then we'll talk more about the complementary work program. But I did want to do one thing following up from our last meeting. We really didn't give Bill Robinson enough credit for all the behind-the-scenes work that he does to distribute all the information and nag me and say, hey, I don't think people even know what information's out there. So I really want to thank Bill and give him a round of applause. Thanks, Bill. So tonight we're going to talk about both aspects of the program. We expect to be out of here in about an hour and hope some of you will stick around and let us know how you might be interested in helping. So without further ado, this is Allison Selly from Momentum Worldwide.
Hi. Thank you, Matt and Lisa, and thank you everybody for having me here tonight. And I just want to start out with how happy I am that I got lucky enough to get Placerville as one of my cities. I have family in the area, so I'm also particularly excited that that this is mine as well. So just thank you. I will go through some of the background information, and I know you've all heard most of this before, so I'll cover this rather quickly. But if you have any further questions about details of the background of this program, please feel free to ask them in the question and answer session we have at the end, or approach me later on. Also, we'll have some cards at the back table if anybody wants to email or call about anything in particular, any thoughts or concerns. I know a lot of you met Eric Guerra, who was here the last time, and I will be taking over the Placerville Main Street Matters project from him. He's still actively involved, but I'll be the primary contact for you to have moving forward on the Momentum Worldwide and Benjamin Moore side. So in addition to your amazing town contacts as well, Lisa and Wendy and Matt. So let's get started. Make sure I'm going to go in the right direction on this. So we have a quick agenda, background updates on the timeline specifically, and other things, next steps, and our events that will be coming up. So we're starting to think about those. We have some key dates that we want to share with you as well. So in spring 2013, towns all over North America voted, and there were 20 communities that were selected, and Placerville was one of them. All the rest are in Canada and the United States. July and April, we're going to be focusing on pre-planning, and we're wrapping up the pre-planning right now, and we should hopefully be starting some painting within the next, let's see, it's March 24th right now, so I would we'll have the date in here later. I don't want to misquote. So as far as what we're painting, many of you have heard this. We are focusing on the front facades, the first floors of a 1 to 2 block segment of the historic downtown. We aren't announcing the actual segment until we get information from our contractors so we know what we can actually work on. So that announcement will come a little bit later, but it is in the downtown area. And we're going to be working with local contractors that are going through the selection process, and they'll all be lead certified by the state of California. They'll give them our bids, and then we'll select from there. Another thing about the businesses that we're working on, there are a couple requirements. They need to be locally owned businesses and not political or religiously affiliated. As many of you know, we did some lead testing, so thank you for signing your lead testing agreements. We greatly appreciate that. We couldn't move forward without that, and I know that you guys all signed those almost immediately, so thank you. That initial testing is done with the exception of 1 or 2 items, and the results are going to be kept confidential. We're under strict guidelines to not share them with anybody. So if you do have a question about your particular building, that information won't be released unless we get formal requests signed in writing by the landlord, and just come to me. Nobody in the town even has this information, so there's no concern about the information about your particular building being shared or public about the results of that test. The contractors will be lead certified, so whether your building has lead in it or not, they will still be lead certified and will handle everything appropriately. We also have the Benjamin Moore paint vouchers that I know a lot of you have asked about. Those are going to be coming out in a little bit. I will have them available. I keep track of who I give them to. We give them to the one per business or landlord, and each voucher is good for $10 off per gallon, up to 10 gallons of paint, so a total of $100 off for a select line of Benjamin Moore paint. It's our upper end. We're working with a retailer right now as far as what that's exactly going to say, so more information to come on that, but they are on the horizon. So hold tight, we will get them to you. If anybody in particular has a project that they want to be working on, and if you don't catch me and you do want one, definitely make sure you grab my card and let me know that you are interested in getting one, and we can arrange for that because we want to make sure that you do get those. They are redeemable at the paint spot, the local Benjamin Moore retailer. So we also have a gift sign coming. This is the installation of this is the location is still yet to be determined, but this is the general overview of what it looks like. It's a Benjamin Moore Main Street Matters sign, and it'll say Main Street and Placerville, California on it. It's beautiful. It's a decorative sign. It's not meant for any directional purposes. Otherwise, you'd have to create a street called Benjamin Moore Street the 14th, April 14th, and meet with all of the building owners and go over the Benjamin Moore color palette for the Placerville, the city of Placerville, specific for this town. So we have worked with color consultants to have an idea of what colors to work with that will be a cohesive look for the town, regardless of the architecture. If you do not want to do the suggested color that the color team recommended, there's also the option to do a straight refresh too. So you could just get a refresh of a Benjamin Moore color that as closely matches what color you currently have to just kind of spruce it up a little bit. So that's definitely an option if you don't want to. So the events, what I think is the fun part, it's kind of like a party. We have the first stroke to kick off painting, and that will be the week of 6/2. Still waiting to finalize that 100%, but look for more information about it for that week. It'll be a lot of fun. Everybody's welcome to come. It'll be primarily a PR event. There'll be a few people talking just to introduce the program publicly to any media, but we would love to have anybody from the community there. We also have our celebration event, and that is going to be a lot of fun. We'll get a huge cake, So free cake. There's going to be music, festivities. We have a scavenger hunt we like to do where you can win some prizes if you can participate in the scavenger hunt. And it'll be a lot of fun. It's a great time for everybody in the community to get together and celebrate and what we've started to do with the revitalization and also the extra projects that you as Placerville have come together to do in response to this as well. So I know that you have a lot of other things going on, and I think actually that brings it over to Matt. So that's perfect timing. So Matt can come in and chat about everything that you guys have done. So thank you very much.
We really appreciate everybody being here tonight and coming out to the outskirts of town. We know it's not as convenient as being downtown. This was the first time in 19 years of doing community meetings in Placerville. There was no room at the proverbial inn to have this meeting anytime in March and anytime in April, which is a really good problem to have. It means Placerville is doing extremely well. So what we wanted to talk about now was bringing back to you all those ideas that were brainstormed back on January 30th. And just for transparency, I posted up on the back wall, those are the same post-it notepads that we wrote on that night. I've simply transcribed those into a numbered list 1 through 30 something, and that's what we'll talk about tonight. But to refresh everybody's memory, and I think just by glancing at the audience, most people were here last time. Who wasn't here back on January 30th? Just a few, okay. So when we last met, we talked about the fact that part of the underlying strategy for this Benjamin Moore program was to shine a spotlight on the historic main streets and to give communities an opportunity to leverage that investment by Benjamin Moore to do other things that we as a community choose to come together and do. And there's no requirement. This isn't a big government-driven thing. It's really just the old-fashioned barn raising. We're all in the community together. If there's something that we want to do, we'll look at trying to share resources and otherwise figure out how to get some things done. So we had some really great ideas, and we brainstormed around, what would people like to see? And so we'll go through that. The magical moment for the night for me, because you don't know what answer you're going to get, is, okay, now we came up with all these great ideas, but are we all clear that there's not some theoretical other person that's going to do that? Somehow it's us as a community, and that was really, really, could have gone either way, but the audience, you all were very, very good about, this is something that we want to do and we're there. And we talked about doing it in smaller groups and work parties surrounding kind of individual efforts versus, one big descendant. We all descend on downtown Placerville for a week and do some kind of Navy SEAL operation. So we talked about trying to break this up into bite-sized pieces. And we didn't get really into whether it had to be from Bedford to Sacramento Street. I think the idea was, in the spirit of the community, the historic Main Street is an epicenter, but it's not all of what we talked about that night. And so that was really, really excellent. So the next 2 pages are just a summary, and I think everybody hopefully picked up this handout on the way in. This is just literally typing those ideas that you came up with and categorizing them in some way so that I could start to wrap my brain around what this might look like. So without trying to read all of these to you, I would just kind of highlight a few things. So there were several things in terms of additional painting. Benjamin Moore is going to have their work program, and it's going to be what Allison brings back to us in the coming weeks. But we talked about the Highway 50 views that we mentioned a few minutes ago, perhaps other elements of buildings that Benjamin Moore is investing in, but that maybe have sides, upper stories, backs of buildings, additional buildings, either within the Sacramento Street to Bedford Avenue or along the greater Main Street. Both west of Sacramento Street or east of Bedford Avenue. So that was something the group was very, very interested in. A lot of talk, more than I anticipated, and really good stuff around the restoration and some of the other facade work that could be done different from just painting. And so that was everything from the Main Street facades to the Highway 50 frontages, awning replacements, maybe restoring some of the historic features. And we talked a little bit about the fact that part of what makes Placerville's and the Gold Country's architecture unique is it's not a time capsule from 1860 or 1880 or 1970. It's really kind of a blend of all of that, and that's what makes it sort of funky and unique. And it's neither a style and a style at the same time. But there was some talk about trying to look at whether it was appropriate to restore some of the historic features. And then also the note that some of the building materials are not stainable or paintable because they're masonry and stone and those things, and some of those could be sealed and have other treatments to them. So really interesting ideas around things I grouped as electrical, the idea that maybe we want to, as a community, talk about Wi-Fi downtown versus a business by business, and whether that would be an attractant for tourists and people coming to town. The idea of having a standardized or a permanent external PA system versus each of our nonprofits and community groups bringing in our own PA system for individual events and how that might look. And then been a lot of talk over the last couple of months about the rooftop accent lighting that was installed many years ago, and parts of it or all of it doesn't work as well as we would like it to, and whether we could do anything with that. Some landscaping ideas related to the creek and the Main Street public landscaping, some streetscape ideas in terms of beautification and touch up on the bell tower, perhaps looking at investing in additional murals downtown, which I put under the streetscape component versus under a painting component, because it really fulfills more of a sense of place than it is a painting purpose. Some other aesthetic details to the retaining wall at Canal Street. So years ago, as part of the Highway 50 improvements, we were able to get funded the treatments to most of the retaining walls. But the grants that I wrote with the Transportation Commission didn't extend far enough to get to some of the retaining walls in the west end of town, but that's a great thing for us to have in a work program. Is something that we as a community want to touch up. Some infrastructure repair things, so Main Street itself, sidewalks, the parking garage. Some signage issues, some basic maintenance and cleaning issues, marketing and media. So we've got Bill Thorpe here and Bill Robinson here tonight. We're going to look at trying to document all of this transformation in the months to come, and not necessarily even compile that into an end product, but capture it so that it's available to the community or to Benjamin Moore or the visitors bureaus and the chambers for editing and other purposes in the future, because this is a great opportunity to have a little before, during, and after captured in high definition for use down the road. We talked about trying to have a grand final celebration that incorporates more than just the great things that Benjamin Moore has planned for the end of June. And then a few just other notes that I wanted to make sure we captured in terms of having these organized community groups. Don't let them get too large or too small. Take things in bite-sized chunks. Review some of the recommendations from the prior city work related to downtown revitalization, and so forth. So that's what you all said. If you have questions, I thought I'd just stop for a minute and make sure that we all remember what each of those are, or if you think, I don't know that we really said that, or you didn't capture it correctly, let's talk about that. Because then I'd like to talk about what we might do in the months looking forward. What I needed to do, kind of putting on my project manager hat, is say, okay, each one of these things is terribly overwhelming if you don't start to jump into what actually happened. So I found this great template. I didn't really create all of this from scratch. I strongly encourage you, if you have writer's block, you look at the Excel templates, because they come up with the wedding shower planner, which you can then modify to be the Main Street Matters. And this is my way of just thinking about, okay, what would we need for every one of those things? We need somebody to coordinate that effort. We need some basic milestone schedules of how do we go from brainstorming to actually figuring out what it needs to look like. Identifying anything that are going to be costs that we just can't avoid through volunteers or donated materials. What are some of the financial resources that would be necessary to do that, and how would we do that? Because there isn't a budget to do this work. And Lisa's been reminding me constantly we need to make sure, we need to make sure that PDA is not associated with financing this stuff. This is sort of things that as a community we can do. And that's a really, really important message that I don't want to lose sight of. And then there's some other detail behind this in terms of who the work groups might be composed of. Over the last 2 months, I've had amazing level of interest from service clubs, nonprofits like Motherload Rehabilitation, the El Dorado Union High School, the County Office of Education and its programs, including connection through the Youth Council or the Youth Commission. So there's an amazing amount of potential resources that are out there. And so what I'd like to start talking about tonight is what some of our priorities might be for where we put our initial attention, and then how we might start matching up some of the work programs with some of those that have expressed some interest. And then part of my job will be to figure out where are those gaps and how do we fill the gaps. It's my belief, from the work I've done in my career, is if you can chunk something down the community's really, really interested in into bite-sized pieces, then we'll figure out how to get it done. That's my premise. But again, there's not some mythical person that's going to write a really big check and just make this all happen. And there's no intent to have this be bigger or smaller than you want to be as a community. It can be really whatever you want. So then the question is, what are the priorities? So what I thought I'd do is bring up the lights and take 5 minutes to let you get up, get a little motion. And as I said, on the back wall are those notes from the first meeting, which basically were captured up there on that matrix of things. So everybody, when you came in, should have gotten 4 silver stars and a gold star. So the idea would be, in the next 5 minutes, and Molly, if you would retape my one that's just falling off the wall there. If you will wander past that wall and decide what 4 things are important to you and you would really like to see us emphasize those, and those are where you would place a silver star. And then the one thing you can't live without, put the gold star there. And just by, I think visually we'll start to get an idea of where the priorities are. So if we take 5 minutes, you can get a cookie, some coffee, some water. Restrooms are right outside the door, and we'll start in 5 minutes.
Sell my gold star.
Hey, that's not a bad idea.
Otherwise, they're going to bring a tree and plant it in the middle.
Found all Develop supplemental contractors list.
Sexy it up.
We have a new model.
Yeah. Memory.
Yeah, where is that one?
You got some vacation.
I thought you were going to get paid.
That one. I gave it one years ago.
It's really vacation. Just donations to my bank account.
It seems so easy till you're stuck with one. This is a tough one. I went right to the lights, rooftop lights.
I would just like to see lights downtown, not necessarily the tops, but just lights.
Where's the lights on?
Where was the lights? Don't be too quick.
I would put them over there, but all the cameras are here, so I think it'll be good here.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, so can I just make a quick announcement while we're doing this? A couple people have actually asked me about.
You have to diversify. You need tall, short.
A few people have asked me about what if they're gone that week of the 14th? Does that mean I'm excluded? No, it doesn't. If you're going to be on vacation and you know about this, and we know usually when I'm looking for somebody or when we're looking for somebody, somebody knows so-and-so's on vacation and that's why they're not getting back to you. If you filled out the lead permission slip already, we know that you're interested. So it does not mean that you're excluded. We would just, you'd probably have a couple emails waiting for you when you get home, and then you would contact us at that point, and usually I would just note to put you on hold. So we're not gonna just exclude you just because you're on vacation, so, yes.
All right, so I put everything up on this wall just because it's sort of better orientation for the cameras. But it seems to me that just glancing, the really top obvious things are, in fact, the things that really got any stars at all, the Wi-Fi on the lower end of 3 stars, the PA system, the Highway 50 frontages or the Highway 50 facing sides of buildings, a couple on the Highway 50 signs, a couple on the weed and brush control, several for repave and sidewalk repair, 4 on the facade work. I think the most on restore the rooftop lighting, although probably pretty close with the paint, the Highway 50 frontages, murals, parking garage, sprucing up, all got the vote. So that's actually only 1, 2, maybe 8 or so of that larger list that all of your energy was focused towards. So that's really helpful to me to get an idea of what, where your all's focus was. So hold that thought for a second. Chris was asking me during the break about, sort of the realistic timing and schedule of this rolling out. So these are not all created equal, obviously. Some of these are things that we could do in parallel with the Benjamin Moore prep work, painting work, and have accomplished by the final reveal in June. So that would include the sidewalk work, probably some of the sprucing up related to the parking garage, some of the weed and brush control, the awning replacements. Some of these things, like the rooftop lighting, probably is an 18-month project just to figure out all the logistics of how are we going to do it, what do we want it to look like, how do we involve all the different property owners, who's going to pay the electrical bill, all of those things, right? Those aren't complicated things. They're just things that require being identified and dealt with in sequence. Some of the other things that are going to affect how we roll this out, obviously whether some things can't be done during certain parts of the year and others can be. Some are going to require coordination with the city and other entities. So just to go back to that overall summary of the work program, those in red are things that might not even be just a one-time thing. They might be things that we identify as a community we just want to deal with on an ongoing, regular basis. So power washing the sidewalks has ebbed and flowed over the years for a whole bunch of good reasons as to why it's got more or less attention, but it's something that you might want to consider being an ongoing thing. Some of the creek work, the weed and brush control. The things that are highlighted in green have the other special consideration of they're not just do it one time, they really have to have some thought in terms of maintaining it and operating it. So things like the rooftop lighting, from my standpoint, doing a lot of project management work and a lot of work for public agencies, it doesn't make sense to build something if you don't have a plan to keep it up. So that's just my 2 cents worth. So those things identified in green, the Wi-Fi, the external audio system, the rooftop lighting, are things that you'd really want to think about how you're going to keep it up before you make the final commitment to invest in it. And again, possible ongoing things in terms of the parking garage and shaping the trees and the vegetation on Main Street. I have another slide, but I forgot it. Didn't intend to include it. So one of the questions that Chris was asking me is essentially for those things that were your priorities but not possible to really accomplish in the next 3 months in parallel with Benjamin Moore's project, should that be something what's the life of those items outside of this process? And there's really no right, wrong answer associated with that. It could be that we all decide, myself included, that there's some great value here in continuing to identify how we would accomplish all of these things, at least the priority things, even if they are going to take 15 months or 2 years to develop the resources and an action plan that everybody can agree to. That's okay with me. That's really sort of your call. It might also be that there's other groups in the communities that would be really good homes for all of those ideas. So my suggestion would be in the next couple of weeks, with the direction that you've provided in terms of the priorities, and I think general consensus that we got it right in terms of what you said, and et cetera, that you give me a couple weeks to think about a work plan for each one of these things and what some of the basic tasks are. Look at all of these community groups and the individuals that have expressed an interest in working on different things and see where there's some natural fits between what needs to be done and how we might do it. The other thing that we would focus on, particularly related to the awning replacements, power washing the sidewalks, is make sure we have the right vendors with the right skill sets and the right equipment to actually do that, or in the case of the awning replacements, find the vendors that can make available discount pricing to groups of building owners. That would be my suggestion. And we can, through email distribution, seek your input on a more formal work program that we start to develop, with the idea that a month or two from now, we come together and decide, do some of these things have a home outside of this process? Are we interested in somehow having an extension of this process after the Benjamin Moore repainting and that final celebration? Again, there's not any right or wrong answer. So I'd open it up for your input or feedback on sort of those general topics. And Chris, I don't know if I gave proper credit to the way your question was.
I just want to take 1 minute and just say, it's almost like we have this program called Paint What Matters, and then we have this other program called What Matters. In the Paint What Matters program, essentially we have things that we could be doing at the same time, that if we get on it, the time period may be similar, and it's those things that kind of tie to the Paint What Matters that we ought to be attentive to, because that's what's coming up. The other part, which is what I'll call what matters, is the things like downtown PA system and Wi-Fi for downtown. And I just wanted to say that there's a group called PEAC, which is called Placerville Economic Development Advisory Committee, or PEAC, and we meet monthly. And we're talking about economic development for Placerville, both Broadway, the three being Broadway Village, Placerville downtown, or Placerville Drive, and then Main Street. So, and that is important because it's a forum of discussion about what's important to us. And this what matters part is really important because there's some great things up here. So the success that Matt's got going right now is that we've captured up so many things that I don't want to lose them. And that was my question during the break. I don't want to lose these things, but I see that they might get left out because they're just not our focus. Was that
Yes,
is that kind of?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So yeah, so my thought would be, having done, not this process before, but a lot of them, that there is some good stuff here. And part of, before we wrap this process up, we ought to identify, what homes, these ideas might connect to, so there's a clean handoff, or we just we figure out how to just perpetuate this process for a couple of extra months. As I had a chance to listen to Chris and think about the priorities that you established, the things that I think are generally doable between now and the end of the calendar year that basically match up with the Paint What Matters program would be looking at least painting the Highway 50 building facades or that exposure, the weed and brush control, the sidewalk repair and power washing, some of the parking garage maintenance, and then the two that probably are not realistic to do between now and the end of June, but probably could be attempted this calendar year. In addition to that would be some mural work, and then the city's efforts to look at the repaving of Main Street. And that's probably a realistic 2014 work program. And then the things that you've identified as priorities that are beyond that reasonable 2014 would be, Wi-Fi, the PA system, the Highway 50 signs, some of the other facade works on the building and the rooftop light, and then the Canal Street retaining wall. And to me, I'm just as an independent observer or facilitator, those are things that are well worth capturing and either perpetuating through some version of this discussion or finding a proper home elsewhere in the community. So, thoughts?
Oh, well, I'm kind of jumping in.
Yeah.
Have there been any artist renderings of what some of the plans are as far as Benjamin Moore, or just the color swatches? Oh, the buildings themselves. The buildings themselves and possibilities of them all fitting together, the color scheme?
So one of the things that we try to do is we like to offer color masking of the buildings that we stand up. Maybe I should just stay up here. We do like to offer color masking of what each building would look like with the suggested colors, and depending on the city, we sometimes have that color masking, or we have a picture of the building with the color swatches that the color team has recommended.
Photoshop thing.
For as far as the documents go?
Well, all the buildings flowing together.
Oh, no, actually, no, we don't have a document like that. But that's a great idea.
From a before and after kind of thing.
The color team does take into consideration what each building next to the other looks like when they make the color recommendation for per building. So it is taken into consideration what the neighbor is doing or recommended to do and what they currently have, but it's not on a one cohesive Photoshop.
Other questions or comments or yes?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
All these ideas are great, but I think they kind of muddy up the concept of painting town.
Yes.
Perhaps we could discuss ways that we could come together and make sure that the painting, the prep work, the stuff that goes involved in painting happens instead of, these are great ideas, but I think it's distracting us. from
So
what
talk
the
to me
main
about
goal
that
is.
a little bit.
Well, each and every building is going to have different needs. Some of them are going to need, masonry repair. Some are going to need trim repair, facade work. There's a lot that goes into painting, and I feel like we've kind of veered away from the main point of painting everything, and we've moved into beautifying downtown, which is great. But I'd like to see more discussion on actual painting of town, how we can come together and make sure that each and every building comes out its best.
And are you thinking within the work that Benjamin Moore is going to do as part of their program?
Absolutely. Well, how can we as a community supplement that to make sure
Okay.
that what actually happens is great, that each building looks
Right.
wonderful?
Right, especially
Instead-
with two-story buildings.
These are, you've got hundreds and hundreds of man hours in other projects going. How can we narrow that down to getting town painted?
Can I address that really quickly?
Absolutely.
So as far as what the Benjamin Moore program does in the selected area that does get repainted, before we repaint it, we do look at those items, minor repairs that need to be done, and we address those. We talk to the building owner and say, you have a hole in your stucco. And depending on what it is, we like to see those fixed. We want to make sure that the paint job that we are going to apply is a lasting quality paint job, and with those underlying issues, you can't accomplish that. So we do look at those and we assess those. So if there's something that you want to have addressed on your building that we haven't already noticed and collected the spec information for on your particular building, those can definitely be brought up then, and we can.
Okay, I just would hate to see part of the buildings getting painted and part of them getting partially painted because, at some point it becomes a financial, problem for the building owner.
Yep.
Like us, our facade's got a lot of trim, a lot of neat stuff, but the bulk is upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How can we come together and make sure that each building is done correctly?
So in an expansion of the Benjamin Moore project, is that so
Right.
in addition to what we're doing?
Right, and like I said, I love all these little side projects,
Doesn't
but I
that
think
go
it's not
back
the
to
main
Tony's
focus. of
question
what
about
we're
having
talking
time, having enough time? So,
To get it done.
so Benjamin Moore will identify the areas of concern and the possible repair items, but then it's up to the owner, is what I'm hearing you say, it's up to the owner of the building to then find the people or crew to fix that hole in the stucco.
So what we do is Rudy, who we work with from the Benjamin Moore team, he's the local rep. He goes through and he says, okay, building A, the first floor, the area that we're looking at painting, on the ground level, there's a hole in the door, for example, and then that would go into our spec on what we want to have repaired in order to have a paint job that looks nice, that's presented well. You don't want to paint a door that has a hole in it. And we would look at repairing it, or look at to see our different options, and we would address those. I would have a conversation with the building owner about what we would hope to do to repair that within our means, and then we would go from there. We wouldn't say, we generally don't say to a building owner that you need to repair this in order for us to paint something that's in our intended scope. So if there's something beyond, if you have a hole, say, in the back of your building that you'd like to have painted too, then because it's not in our intended scope, then yes, that would be something that.
I don't know that we've had this conversation. I don't know that this information has
correct.
come out before.
Yep, you're right, Jill.
And so this is really good information. I'm glad that Jeff brought up the question. Because we haven't talked about the repairs and how those are going to happen,
Yeah.
and if they're in scope or if they're not in scope and all of that. So thank you for sharing that
Oh, of course.
information.
If it's a minor repair, we like to have them included. If it's something major, you're welcome to bring it up, and then it's something where I can't guarantee it, but.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
I would like
Yeah.
to see, where we could all come together and get the repairs
The
that aren't
major-
within your scope.
Yeah.
We could find a way to make those happen, so that every building looks good.
And it sounds like we need to have that conversation, Jeff, after she assesses and sits down with each building owner.
Right.
So that we then have a list of what they're going to take care of and a list of what still needs to happen.
Yeah, I think that's, that could be something that during the office meeting, office hours, that, we could start generating a list of concerns that are in addition to the scope. Yes.
Yeah, it was similar along the line I was going to talk about, is that at the time you identify these buildings and sit down with them, then you can get a commitment from the building owner is, are they painting the second floor? Are they painting the third floor? What they're doing at this time, and then we know if we want to follow up with the building owners, or so whatever, what it would take to complete the whole thing
To
that you were
ensure
talking
that
about.
every building gets painted.
Right,
and
right.
looks good, completely.
Just to get a sense from everyone, who owns a building here that knows that if their building gets selected for the first floor, that they would like to take on painting the second floor themselves? Can you just raise your hand?
Well, I don't own it, but the city said I
Yeah.
could.
Yeah, at your expense.
Oh, yeah.
So we have about 4 or 5 people that would take on that, painting the
I'm like
second floor at
Monk,
their own
I'd go
expense.
crazy if I saw the one.
Maybe 6.
The reason why I don't want to commit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What I'm looking for goes back to what Jeff said and what Jill said. It has to do with what does prep mean to us? And is that dollars? It sounds like there's a reasonable amount of dollars that could come in from the Benjamin Moore program for prep. And I'm speaking just to the ground floor. Now, if we knew that your assessment was broad enough, I mean that you're giving the whole building a look, especially if it's on Highway 50 side or maybe Stagecoach Alley, which is where the parking garage is. So you got back buildings along Stagecoach Alley. If we knew that you had this overview, that you were going to take a portion of that and commit to it, and then tell us what's left, then we can decide at that point, do we have the funding to be able to do what you are proposing? It may be a question of also levels. To be successful in the Paint What Matters program, you're looking for a particular sprucing up of the buildings, and beyond that comes the broader, the broader look that ties into some of the other questions. But we don't know, because this is the questions. You haven't had the one-on-ones. The questions haven't been shared. The answers haven't been shared. So, what's kind of, having heard us tonight, how do you think we stand in terms of going forward? What more do you need to know in terms of for us to keep going?
And expand upon our project, or what Benjamin Moore is offering.
Which I don't know yet,
Well,
because I haven't had my one-on-one.
right. So that's a great point. Thank you, Chris. I have to say that I think Placerville has expressed more interest than many of the other towns on expanding and building upon this program on a personal basis. So I am really impressed with everybody here and all the feedback and I know Matt and Lisa and Wendy also mentioned that there was a lot of interest from the city to expand upon this. So I think that we probably will need to discuss that's why I wanted to get some information on who is actually interested in expanding upon it and paying for that and doing that, taking it upon that themselves. So then I can go back to the contractor and then discuss with them and say, hey, these buildings, you know, A, B, and C would like bids on the rest of their building, and then I can present that information to you. But at this point, we are looking at such a broad range of buildings that it would take the contractor a long time to give a bid out to everybody. So if we get an idea of who's really interested, then I can you know, call up the contractor and say, hey, what about this building, and then get back to you on that. So yes,
just in terms of that context.
Sure.
I mean, that was a reasonable answer, so I'm not being probing any more than that I already have. But Matt, what do you think is collectively, how many property owners are here in terms of the ones that are not here?
No.
That.
Just what percentage?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty.
Probably like 20%.
Yeah.
And there's something, it's hard for me to count how many buildings there are because they all blend together. But there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 55 buildings or 60 buildings. And we probably have maybe 9 buildings.
So those people are not getting the information firsthand. That's the notion that I have, okay? Which means then that the feedback is not solid. As a project manager, which I've been, I see that this project doesn't have a good solid feedback loop as to information going both ways. Tonight is great, Allison. You really have improved things.
Well, let me suggest this, Chris, because I think I hear where you're going, and I appreciate Jeff sort of starting this thread of the conversation.
Good job, Jeff.
I would quibble a little bit that I think the communication overall has been great. Because we're out of town, we don't have quite the participation tonight. But I think Benjamin Moore's done a great job. Bill Robinson has done a great job making the information available. It sounds like really what we're saying, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, is that once Benjamin Moore defines its scope, then we're back to the question of how do we deal with things that are out of the scope? Because until we know what's in the scope, we can't know what's out of the scope.
That's
we can't
correct.
have a work program to deal with what's out of the scope. And that probably is 3 elements. It's the any prep and repair work that's just beyond what Benjamin Moore can do. It's other elements of the building that maybe are in Benjamin Moore's work program, but it's the upper stories, the side, or the back, or whatever. Or it's other buildings along Main Street that are not part of the Benjamin Moore scope. And until we know what's in, we don't know what's out, and we can't really talk about how to accomplish it.
Right.
So my suggestion would be, I don't want to create meetings for the sake of meetings, but maybe we need to have another meeting in April that coincides when we have the information as to what the Benjamin Moore scope is, and we can have a conversation about what's not included in that scope and how we accomplish that.
Yeah, like the end of April or something like that.
After she has her one.
Yeah, even in the middle of it, as soon as you have that information that's available, and I don't want to commit to something until we have a chance to really talk about how that will logistically work. But I'm happy to do that, and I think that would probably be great for everybody.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we'll work in the next couple of weeks offline and figure out what that looks like and how we can actually do that, and then we'll schedule something, and we'll maybe even try to pull rank on the ping pong class. We can be at town hall.
we could start our own ping pong team.
Or we could have our own we could just join the class.
Go in disguise.
Exactly. Does that sound good?
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
And then that way we don't try to solve the problem tonight, just we've identified what it is. Okay. Well, Jeff, thank you for bringing that up. And I sort of glossed over that because it kind of got lost.
What Chris said.
Yep. Appreciate that.
Well, like
We've
you
gone
said,
through rock.
paint what matters and what matters as being separate. That-
Other questions?
Maybe it's not a question,
No,
but
that's all right.
I'm
Comments?
concerned
Sure.
as that the last time we had our building painted, which as everyone knows is a very big tall building, we contacted many contractors and had one give us a bid because it was 2-story. And so that's kind of a problem around here
narrowed ourselves
because
down
of the
to one
scalp. Yeah, we had one
Are
contractor.
they going to show up?
Well,
That's with any contractor.
I hope so.
So you don't know.
Getting it power wash, you don't want to ruin the bottom, you know?
So
Yeah, that prep's got to be done beforehand.
So what's
Second
available?
floor's got to be prepped before the first floor is finished.
So when we have this community meeting, I'm just going to call it the third meeting so that we're clear. We really ought to talk about how to do that work, some of the logistics, which is starting to be what you're getting at. And so, like you're saying, as you get to the second stories, you're really talking more about painting with scaffolding, and scaffolding has impairment to the sidewalks, you need temporary sidewalk closures and those things. We would need to deal with that, okay?
And if we're doing the whole town, we're gonna have sidewalks and we're gonna have scaffolding up and down the whole
Right.
town.
But I mean, it's as part of having a robust conversation, we might as well identify sort of what those issues are, figure out how we might be able to tackle them. I don't have a particularly great solution for any of this, but just by
at least we're
identifying
talking
it, we
about
can
it.
start working on it.
You know, Placerville Newsstand is the building we're speaking about.
Yep.
That's Marion.
Okay.
Okay. So I think this is probably the best shot because of the broad implication for you guys to get it done. Because that one person is going to be, whoever they are, is going to be approved by Benjamin Moore. They're going to meet all the criteria, and essentially that includes any additional work that may be proposed. That's the way I see it. Now, what do you think, related to their opportunity under this program?
So if we take this program as being sort of the broader thing and not just what Benjamin Moore's investment is going to be in our community.
That's correct.
Then, as I see it, not just for that building, but sort of, the broader Main Street, I don't want to get into the street to that street, but the broader Main Street, there's a component of it where the buildings probably don't need to be repainted because they've been recently painted. There's most of them that could use a refresh of paint at a minimum, and some of that's going to be done by Benjamin Moore and some is not. So within that whole context, I think having this third community meeting to talk about what's not, how we might accomplish that, some of the logistical things that we'd have to address in the process, that's a conversation we can have. And we can have a very robust conversation. That's sort of the stuff I do.
Yeah, we'll each have information to work with.
Absolutely. And I don't think, if anybody here has the exact solution to how it's going to work, you're welcome to take the flip charts. I don't have a clue. But I think by chunking this down, we can get there.
Okay.
There you go.
Other topics, questions, concerns? So a couple quick, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm hesitant because it's kind of off topic, but
No,
a lot of these things have price tags to it.
Right.
How would funding for these things go? I mean, is this too big of a topic to wrestle with?
I don't think so. Keeping my response broad, because my experience with projects like this is with a broad amount of community support, there's multiple ways that we can get it done. There are some places where there may be some one-time monies available to do things that are for broader community benefit. There's certainly some vendors and some individuals that have skill sets that would be willing to participate in this in sort of the old-fashioned barn raising. And then there's probably some amount that you really can't find community resources to pay for, really can't be done by donated labor, et cetera. And then there's a final net price tag. And then the question would be, okay, how could we accomplish that? If it's got broader community benefit and you're down to a small price tag, there's crowdfunding and other sources where it's pretty interesting when you give people an opportunity to invest in a specific thing, what opportunities exist. So Lisa asked a similar question the other day. There's 8 or 9 general top categories of ways that I think we could accomplish this. And I feel pretty good that a lot of it can be done. Will all of it be done? I'm not 100% convinced, but I'm willing to continue to push and see what we can do.
Sure.
Couple quick wrap-up things, and I'm going to stick around and answer questions. But just a couple of final thoughts. So we'll have a third community meeting. I'll start to work on a work program. If you didn't sign in for some reason, and particularly if you have an email address and didn't leave it with us, we'd like to get that so we can populate our broader email address. I'm going to work with Molly and everybody else over the next couple of weeks to start putting this work program together and trying to identify how the resources connect up with the work, particularly for these priorities, which we can work on in parallel with Benjamin Moore defining what their work scope is. I really appreciate everybody coming out of town tonight. A couple of people that I really want to thank. I mean, Lisa's been tremendous, and Wendy Thomas from the city's been tremendous, and Cleve and Pierre and Nate from the city. have been awesome in supporting us. We probably couldn't have kicked off this event without the Mountain Democrat of giving this that initial kickstart of publicity. Jill for bringing the coffee tonight. No, that's really, because I would probably be laying on the floor if I didn't have your coffee. And Lisa, who did I forget to thank this time?
Well, we thank Bill already.
We can thank Bill one more time.
One more time.
Bill Thorpe for coming and with his student crew videotaping tonight, and that's going to run on.
That will start running on Channel 18 next, probably Tuesday, and we're on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sundays from 6 till midnight every day of the week. So this meeting will run on that, so let people know.
And then Debbie Aiken from the County Board of Education serves quite admirably, keeping me in line, and Janet Meridiak from the County Office of Education staff, completely volunteers to help support this effort and make all of the behind-the-scenes stuff work and be here tonight. I really, really appreciate it. If I forgot anybody this time, I'll apologize next time. Thanks for coming. Have a good night.
You forgot yourself.
Thank you, Allison.